Staging your financial comeback, keys to recovering from a financial crisis. I'm Anna Moss, and I'm so excited because today I get to sit down with the author, Charlene Storr herself, so that we can get a deep dive into this book that's now on shelves everywhere. This is going to be good. I'm going to ask all of those financial questions we all have. Well, at least most of them. Time is a bit short, but Charlene, I'm so excited to be sitting with you here today. It has been a journey, but we are here.
Thank you, Anna.
We are here. And I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago that I went on the stage of Bahamas Faith Ministries International and I put Charlene on blast. That's something like we say in the Bahamas. I put her on the spot. And so there are a few people who I've had conversations with who always talk about things that they want to do, plans they have. And I sat down in a session where Charlene talked about financial planning and I was blown away because it was so simple. I was like, I actually understand what she's talking about. And so to now be seated here, the book is out. We can have this conversation. It's such a full circle, but such a grateful moment. Charlene, how does it feel?
It feels amazing. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
A number of false starts and delays, etc.
Yeah.
But we're here.
We're here.
It's like birthing a baby. I've been carrying well past 9 months.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a relief. And I'm excited about the change it can create in people's lives if the principles are applied.
They're applied, for sure. And so before we get into the book, I know for some people, they're like, well, who's the Charlene lady? You know, some people who see at a distance, well, her life is all together. How could she possibly be teaching me about financial crisis? But who is Charlene Storr?
On paper, if you look at the certificate on my wall, it will say that I am a certified public accountant. In my heart, and through a journey of discovery, I've come to realize that my work is to counsel and coach people in the area of managing their finances.
Nice.
I've come to accept that that's my purpose. That's my journey.
Yeah.
I think it was Mike Murdoch, who calls himself the Doctor of Wisdom, says, pay attention to the problem that moves you. What gets me is the person that says, I don't know how I'm going to feed my kids, or I'm about to lose my home because we're in default on a mortgage. I find that things like that will keep me awake at night trying to figure out how I help them.
Yeah.
And it's not helping them as in paying their mortgage or buying their grocery, but showing them how or what they can change to bring about that difference where they can actually not just survive, but thrive financially.
Yeah. Charlene, it's so interesting that you say that because as I read through the book, I got so many touches of Dr. Miles Monroe. The way you laid out this book, it really gets you thinking. It's so simple, but it gets you thinking, and it makes me think of him so much. And so I just wonder, I know we've been under his teachings for a very long time. Did he have any influence with the book and how it's written?
I will say it this way. It's hard to sit under that type of influence and not be influenced.
Ooh, that's true.
Yeah,
that's very true.
So yes, and as a matter of fact, it was his book, The Power and Purpose of Vision, that helped me find my place in what I consider to be my life's work.
Wow.
You know, it happened one day at work. I do a lot of, I eat lunch at my desk, close the door, and I try to make my lunch hour productive hour. So I'm reading as I'm having lunch, and the book posed a couple of questions.
Yeah.
What are you trained at? What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What do people say about you?
Ooh, yeah.
And the final question was, what would you do even if you couldn't be paid for it?
Wow.
I'm a certified public accountant. I actually enjoy accounting. I think I'm good at it.
Yeah.
I like listening to people and talking through problems. I've had people say to me, I think you're a good listener and you counsel well, you give sound advice. And what would you do even if you couldn't get paid for it? No disrespect to my 9 to 5. But I looked around at the work on my desk and I said, it wouldn't be this.
Understood.
Fast forward, I'm done eating, open the door, resume work. A colleague walks in. She's obviously troubled by something.
Okay.
Pressed her, and she shared that her and her husband were dealing with something on a financial basis.
Yeah.
And quick conversation. I threw out, did you consider that? What about this? Don't forget you can try that. And she lit up.
Wow.
I'm going to call my husband right now to
Wow.
tell him this. And I went, that's it.
That's it.
That's what I would do, even if I couldn't be paid for it.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of me understanding where my work should take me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Charlene, for you, have you ever experienced a financial crisis or financial difficulty? And how did you get around that?
I'll say it this way. By the time I hit my teenage years, it occurred to me, I looked back on the life we lived when I was growing up, and I went, oh, wow, we were poor.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
But not that I felt any lack or anything. I don't remember ever going to bed hungry.
Yeah.
We didn't get what we wanted. We got what we needed. My mother was very frugal with the little money she earned.
Yeah.
And we had as much or as little as our neighbors did. So I never felt left out or anything. But I was able to look back and realize she did a lot with what she had.
Wow.
And so that kind of shaped how I manage money.
Yeah.
Very often people look at where I am and assume that I was born where I sit.
Yeah.
Couldn't be further from the truth. When I came out of high school, all I wanted was a job to earn some money. I wanted to be able to buy a car and some clothes. That was my goal. And I was checking those boxes.
Yeah. So college wasn't on the radar at all?
Oh, not at all.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, I worked at a major hotel, and they went through a cycle of, it was a downturn, and they were cutting staff. I worked in administration, and it was such a deep cut that it impacted administration.
Wow.
And I was really nervous that I was going to be terminated because you didn't know who was next.
Wow.
I saw my fellow employees who had been on the job 10, 20, 30 years being laid off.
Wow.
Mostly in the Bahamas, in the hotel industry. A lot of people come from high school right to those jobs.
This is true.
Work your way up, and you can earn pretty decent salaries. So after 30 years of earning this decent salary, you're laid off, and it's all you know, and don't know where to start. That was the reality for many.
Yeah.
And the crisis for me was I didn't want that to happen for me. And that's when I realized, all right, I didn't get laid off in that round, but I just thought to myself, if it comes around again and I'm in the cut, I want to have something to fall back on. Okay. And that is what made me go back to school. I was out of high school 6 years before I started the local college part-time. It took me 5 years to complete the associate's degree.
You said associates?
Associate's degree.
Oh, wow.
5 years. And that includes doing, part-time students take 2 courses most semesters.
Oh, so you worked full-time and worked
I worked full-time, went to school part-time, doing extra classes part-time, never missed a summer session.
Wow.
And it took me 5 years to complete the associate's degree.
Okay.
And then I had an opportunity come up to go off through a scholarship to complete the bachelor's.
Okay.
So that was the, I guess, near crisis, but it shook me up enough to push me in another direction.
Yeah.
And then once I started on that track, was able to build, learn some things, make some adjustments that gets me to where I sit today.
Wow. So it's definitely not a thing of my parents paid for everything, and not that anything is wrong with that, but based on the Charlene we see now, it's a lot of grit, commitment, discipline, sacrifice. And like you mentioned throughout the book, you have to be willing to want to do this.
Yes. You have to have a goal. And most of the goals we set are time goals, right? So for me, getting the bachelor's degree, my first goal was to get the associate's degree,
Yeah.
because that's what was, at the time, was all that was available in the local market.
Yeah.
I didn't really appreciate that it would have taken me 5 years. I wasn't sure what that time frame would be.
Yeah.
I know I wanted it to happen quickly, and that's why I was doing the overloads and the summers, and it took 5 years. And at that point, I determined, oh my gosh, I don't want to do another 5 years to get to the bachelor's. And so thankfully, this opportunity came up that I was able to take advantage of, that got me off for the 2 years to complete the bachelor's.
Okay. And this is off in the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I left to go to university in the U.S., I was 27.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so for people who are like, well, it's too late for me, or I'm too old, or it can't happen, really and truly, it's
never too late. Went to college at 27, got married at 37, was pregnant for the first time at age 40. I mean, I don't believe in too late.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're breathing and you're prepared to work for it.
Prepared to work for it.
Prepared to work for it. Prepared to work towards it. If you're in a challenge, any kind of challenge, and you're prepared to work your way out of it, you will find a way. I mean,
exactly. And I think that's been the theme throughout the book. Because for sure, it's a mindset thing.
It is a mindset.
Yeah, and there's a willingness to wanting to make that change. Yes. And I love that you brought that up throughout the book, because there are people who might think that their situation is so dire, or it's not able, it can't be fixed. But and it's something that I guess we'll talk about in the conversation, but kind of framing your mindset from it can't or it won't to how. Yeah.
And instead of a declaration, a statement that says, I cannot survive this, make it a question. How do I survive this? What can I do to get through this? Because the minute you raise that question, there's something that's triggered inside of you that will force you to open your eyes, to look, to find the solution. And I think that's a key starting point in the mind. Avoid the declarations of defeat. They become self-fulfilling prophecies. But if you challenge yourself, what do I need to do? How do I make it happen? You would be surprised to know how resourceful you are.
Yeah. Wow. And so, Charlene, we mentioned financial crisis a lot. How do you define a financial crisis?
A financial crisis is any situation that makes your finances seem unbearable.
Okay.
That challenges you in the area of your money and how you're managing it. Whether that's, I'm about to lose my house because I've defaulted on my mortgage. I can't pay rent. I don't know how I'm going to feed my children. Or anything, I'm out of work, or I'm starting over, or we've had major financial expenses that leave us in a position where we don't know how to move forward, right? Anything along those lines can produce a financial crisis. Now, you would note that each of those items in itself is a crisis, right? Health crisis, loss of job, anything like that. Not every crisis is a financial crisis, but most crises will create a financial crisis, if that makes sense.
Okay, so there's somewhat of a financial component locked in a crisis. Okay, wow.
Yes. Invariably.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell you every crisis, but invariably.
It's true.
A crisis in any area of your life could potentially produce a financial crisis.
Wow. And so is there, would you say, a timeline of getting over a financial crisis?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I think I use this expression in the book. It's like going on a weight journey, right?
Yeah, you mentioned about a diet, and I was like, this is so good. It's so good.
There are those people who will just cut back on one thing or start exercising and they see results. There are those of us that will cut back, exercise like there's no tomorrow, and see nothing.
It's true.
Right? It's impossible to put a time on it. And in some cases, a financial crisis comes about from one incident.
Okay.
And it was a quick occurrence.
Yeah. In
some cases, financial crises come from a lifelong application of principles and habits that it's difficult to say how long it would take. But I promise you, if you are disciplined and focused on just implementing what I would call some key principles and habits, it is possible, but you have to be prepared to go the cost. I've lost count of how many people I've coached, and in a session, they will get excited because on paper, we could do this.
Yes.
We talk around areas where you can earn more, areas where you can cut back on how you spend, plans to pay down the debt, etc. And they will get excited because on paper, oh my God, I can do this.
Yes.
And then they get up and they leave, and you have to actually do it.
Yeah.
And that's the true test, right?
So why do you think that there's that stall or that lag where they don't then take the action steps to do it?
Because it's a misnomer. I've said it before. We have what is our comfort zone.
Yes, I love how you explained it in the book.
Which, in fact, is 9 times out of 10 not
comfortable at all. Yes,
right? It's familiar.
Yeah.
So we as humans, and it's a natural tendency, we revert to what is familiar. Yeah. This is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. And that's true in every area of our lives, if we're honest. But in our finances, it's critical. You have to be prepared to shift. And shifting is uncomfortable.
It is.
Right? So anyone coming to me invariably is coming because they're in an uncomfortable position. Yeah. And so I like to say, will you be uncomfortable and stuck or uncomfortable and moving towards your goal?
Love it.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And so again, I guess, so for someone who thinks that there is no way out, then there just has to be some things, there has to be a shifting.
Yes.
There has to be a shifting.
Yes. And I have this thing I like to say. Just this week, I had someone ask me, there's an investment coming up. Yeah. And this person and I have never had a conversation about their financials, their finances. But she sent me a note and she says, are you aware of this offering that's coming to the market?
Yeah.
Would you recommend it? I said, that depends.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So anything someone say to me in the line of accounting, finances, the answer is that depends. Because until I know what your numbers are, I like to say you need to know your numbers.
Yes.
Yes.
Know your numbers.
Know your numbers.
Yes.
And what does that mean? For this person that asked me about whether or not to invest, I have no idea. Is this your first investment? How much disposable cash do you have available to invest?
Oh, wow.
Is this money that you can park in an investment for 3 to 5 years? How soon do you need it? You know, what's your risk tolerance? It's any number of things.
Wow.
Now, for most people coming to me, it's not what can I invest in?
Yeah.
It's how do I pay rent? Knowing your numbers. What you have, your assets. What you owe, your liabilities. Yeah. The difference between them is your net worth. Right? How much money you have coming in, how much money you have going out, your net cash flow. The simplistic thing says, if you have a positive net cash flow, you're earning more than you're spending, you're improving your net worth. You have more assets than liabilities. If it's the opposite, and sadly, there are a lot of people that live that way, they're spending more than they earn, then you're decreasing your net worth. So if you say to me, my mortgage is in default, or I want to pay off my mortgage, you know the simplest way to do that? Sell the house and give the money back to the bank. Is that what you want?
No, I want my house.
Right. So, you know, knowing where you are and what the goal is, so we can then figure out how to maneuver, right?
Yeah.
Someone says, I need more money. Here's $1. You now have more money. You know.
Yeah. And in the book, you have a saying that you said your dad says about that. Oh boy, how does it go?
If you spend $1, if you earn $1 and spend $1, you've earned nothing.
Oof.
Yes, yes. And it's all about controlling our consumption, to be honest, right? with the ease of credit that's available to us, it's easy to spend more than you earn. As a matter of fact, I love a credit card, right? It's it's how you use it. It's how you use it. If you're spending cash, there's a certain pain that comes with parting with your money. You like giving up your money? No.
Unless I can get something back, but no.
Most of us are hesitant to spend. If I have $100 bill in my wallet,
oh boy,
I'll walk around with that for the longest.
Because once that's broken,
because I don't want to break it. Right? If you walk in a store and you have a credit card, you realize you don't feel the pain.
No, you don't.
No,
you don't.
You don't feel the pain. So with credit cards, store charges, easy loans, it's easy for us to spend more than we earn. And there are certain circumstances where that may make sense. If you want to buy a home, I mean, you can save up the money and buy the home cash or build it cash, or you can get a loan. And there are areas where it may make sense to do that in certain circumstances. But even how much home and how much we spend, we have to be careful because we're now making this commitment that we're going to repay this money. So we've really put a lane against our future earnings, right? And even entrapped ourselves. So a colleague and I cracked this joke when we were frustrated at work and you feel like, oh my gosh, I want to quit. I'm going to leave. The joke we have is you call the bank and see what your mortgage balance is and you go, no, I can
Let's get back to work.
I can do it. I can do it. Right. Because you become a slave to it, quite frankly. Right? So managing all of that stuff, making sure that you understand what you're committing to.
So Charlene, like you mentioned, you said, your friend reached out to you about making an investment. She's like, Charlene, would you invest in it? But there were certain things that need to be asked. And I think for a lot of people, we're like, oh, it sounds good. Everyone is doing it. Maybe I should do it too. But I like how you broke down those questions. So it should always be a thing that we should kind of step back, think about it, assess our situation, the way forward.
And to be clear, I think investing is a very important part of the journey to real financial freedom. Because you want to be in the position where your money is earning money. Because the day will come when you can no longer physically earn. And or don't want to physically earn. We don't want to get up every day and go to a job for the rest of our lives. At some point, we want to relax, retire, go in a different mode. So investing is important. But to make investment decisions, one, you should understand the investment. I think I know which investment you're referring to. And, if when it's explained to you, you don't understand it. Some of us think you don't want to ask questions because you don't want to appear less than intelligent or knowledgeable. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't touch it. Right? You want to understand what it's doing. 1 + 1 is 2. And, there's nothing wrong with you if you didn't get it. If you don't get it, back off. Or go and try and find out. If the person can't explain it to you, because that's my philosophy, explain how it will work. If I'm not understanding, could you explain that one more time? If after a few explanations it's not making sense, I'm out.
Or I guess they could reach out to you as a financial coach or any financial coach.
Any financial coach, right? Help me make sense of this. And if you can't make sense of it, leave it alone. You want to understand what this thing is doing, how this brings you a return, etc. The next thing is you don't want to invest money. Listen, if in 6 months you need that money to pay your home insurance or to pay your child's tuition, that's not money to invest, right? You want to be investing from funds that are available to invest. And then you don't want to put all of your money in one place. So this is something new, and that was where I was going with the person that asked me, because I have no idea if this is her first time investing. What percentage of her available funds is she investing? I would never say invest 100% in anything because all investments have a level of risk.
For sure.
So you want to invest what you can afford to lose. I know that sounds crazy, but if it goes completely up in smoke, then you're still okay. No one's happy with losing money, but you want to make sure that you understand it and that you're prudent with how much you're putting in a particular investment.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Charlene, I heard what you said about investing. And so someone like my grandmother who was in her 90s would say, well, that's why you keep your money in the mattress. You won't have no problems, you know? But for that person, you know, you said make your money work for you. For those who are a little skeptical about things happening to their money, or again, there's a certain level of risk, do you think that it's better to just kind of withhold it? Or what are your thoughts on that?
The best time to start investing was yesterday.
Okay.
The second best time is now. Right?
Yeah.
One, understand it. You can start small. Yeah. So if you're nervous, and nervous is good because it'll keep you focused.
For sure.
Start small. Look, in investment, you rate the level of risk. Okay. Right? A fixed deposit, a term deposit is an investment. Yeah. You will get 2 cents.
If that.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe beyond that, you want to think of something that's generating a little bit more than that. Yeah. With not too much risk.
Yeah.
So let's say some government bonds. Yeah. Or if, you know, and a lot of them have minimum dollar amounts. So it may be $1,000. Yeah. Yeah. Or you may want to turn the money over. Right? Yeah. So everybody does the buy and sell, right? So you buy something at $50 that you could sell for $60 or $70. Yeah. Turning money over. Yeah. But you cannot invest if you're not saving. Okay. So saving then is almost like the first line.
Okay. Okay. Right? And I love that in the book you give these steps. And so I want us to park there because we've given out all of the good stuff in the book. I want us to park there, but I do want us to piggyback on financial crisis itself. And so, you know, in the book, you mentioned that there will always be crisis. And I think it also touches on the point with Pastor Miles and seasons and the scripture talking about that, you know, there will be challenges. But for you, what does that mean? What do you mean that there will always be crisis? Shouldn't we kind of just be focusing on the good?
Yes, focus on the good. Okay. Not a bad thing. Yeah. But be prepared for the things that are not so good. Yeah. And we talked around this in the book as well when it comes to crisis. As a matter of fact, I use the term that crisis is optional, which sounds crazy, I'm sure.
Yeah, when I read it, I was like, what?
Because a lot of things that produce a crisis doesn't have to produce a crisis. True. I've said this over and repeatedly, and anybody who listens to me probably heard it before. If you own a vehicle,
yes, I've heard this.
Anticipate that at some point you have to replace the tires. Yes. You have to buy a new battery. You have to service other things. Yeah. If you anticipate that, you prepare for it, then it's not a crisis. An inconvenience for sure. If you go to start your car in the morning and you have a dead battery, you're inconvenienced because you have places to be. But it need not be a crisis.
I love that.
Now, if we think of crisis and those things that you can predict, if you live in a body, anticipate that you have to take care of it. True. Whether that means eating well, visiting your doctor. If you know you're not eating well and you're not exercising, you can anticipate that certain body parts are going to malfunction. This is true. As we age, we anticipate things don't work the way they used to. So you anticipate that and you try to build that into how you manage your money. And then, of course, there are things that you cannot control.
This is true.
The next hurricane. Right? The job loss. The death of a family member, God forbid. Those are that's what I mean when I say there will always be a crisis. True. So it's not as if you're living in fear and dread.
Yes.
But you are anticipating that things happen. And you're factoring that into your money management plan.
Gotcha.
Right? In the book, as a matter of fact, this particular book, I had this notion of staging your financial comeback coming out of COVID, where most people were either furloughed, laid off completely,
businesses closed,
underemployed, businesses closed, etc. So if it's not COVID, it's the storm. We talk about, from a biblical concept, seed time and harvest, which means there will always be seasons. Economists will tell you that there is boom,
cycles, yes.
There is decline,
yes.
There is recession, there's boom. That's the natural order of things. I mean, if you plant a tree in the ground, it'll produce fruit, and then either the tree will die or the fruits will all be gone, and you have to wait for the next season.
This is true.
It's there every day in our lives.
This is true.
So being prepared for it, you know, if you don't anticipate that, if you have this beautiful mango tree, it's not going to produce a mango for you every day.
It's true.
Right?
This is true.
So it's, how do you, if you want mangoes year round, what do you need to do? Right? Freeze some.
Yeah, this is true.
So you can't have a fresh mango now. Maybe you need a pureed one from a frozen mango. Well,
exactly.
Whatever, right? But everything in life goes through cycles, and it should not take you by surprise.
I love that. I love that. And so it's kind of maneuvering things where it's not a crisis, but a mere inconvenience. I love that.
Right. And for the crisis that you couldn't prepare for.
That too.
I say couldn't prepare for.
You didn't anticipate.
You didn't anticipate it was coming right now, or when it was coming. To prepare for those as well. To factor that into your financial plan.
And then, so what do we then say for the person who is like, I mean, you know, everything is so expensive. Taxes are so high. I barely don't get paid much. Like, how is this even possible for me when I already have a little? Like, how can this even work for me? Can I really plan for or anticipate those things happening?
One of the things I like to encourage people to do, I mean, back to my dad, spend $1, earn $1. Earn $1, spend $1, earned nothing. What do you earn? Use that and allocate a percentage for whatever it is. Housing, eating, living, entertainment, fun. Because it's okay to factor that stuff in.
True.
For the person that earns less, if you say, I'm going to spend 5% of my money having fun. If you earn $1,000, you spend 5% of $1,000. If you earn $10,000, you spend 5% of $10,000. So the pie is not fixed. It could be larger, it could be smaller, but the portion of the pie
remains the same.
Right. And for the person who is earning less, you can figure out, is there a way for me to increase this earning pie?
True.
Can I earn more?
That's true.
And whether or not it stays here or is increased, what percentage am I allocating? Now, for the person that is earning below minimum wage, I understand that that is a challenge. And there are systems in place that will assist you.
And if you're earning below minimum wage, I think you need employer. There's some things that also needs to be talked about, because you really shouldn't, you know. But
I agree. I agree.
But that is some people's story.
Yes. And so for that person is, what are the options available to me? Is there more I can do to increase this? Are there programs available that can assist me?
This is true. This is true.
So even the most dire of situations, there's a workaround. We have to be creative.
You mentioned that in the book. Yes.
Right? It comes from a mindset. If you say, I cannot survive on what I earn, it'll probably be true. A self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say, how can I survive? It triggers the questioning in you, and the part of you that wants to answer that question, because that's how we're wired. We want to be able to answer a question. So how can I? Then you will find yourself looking.
Wow.
What are the options available for me?
Nice.
And I subscribe to that theory that if you seek, you will find.
Nice, for sure. That's incredible. I mean, even just that question change is a mind shift, a mindset shift in wow.
Yes.
So from a don't to a how.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all, people need to read this book. That's all I'm gonna say. They need to read this book. It's so good. And so then what would you say for the person who's like, but I'm past retirement. You know, is there any hope for me?
If you have breath, you have hope. Right?
Yeah.
Now, again, if you're past retirement, are you earning anything? And now, if you're earning nothing and you past retirement, you still need to eat.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to come out of retirement unless you have a support system.
True. Okay.
Right? And that's where creativity comes in.
For sure.
And again, I would suggest asking yourself, how can I? How do I? Where can I make it happen?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? And then you will start to open your mind up to what the possibilities are.
Nice.
Because if you're sitting in the front of me, that's the question I'm going to ask you. Is there anything you can do?
Yeah.
Can you help someone in exchange? Because money is merely a measure of exchange.
True.
As a matter of fact, I think Mike Murdoch says it this way: money is the reward for solving a problem. And if you're not making enough money, then change the problems you're solving.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Look for different problems to solve.
Wow.
And again, that requires the creativity.
For sure.
How can I? What can I do? Where can I look? And if you start asking those questions, I suggest that you will find a way.
Nice, nice. So how do I know then when I'm in a good financial position?
Most people know because you're comfortable.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
You're not living in fear of any shift.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
If you feel, let's stay with the car example, because more people have cars than they have homes.
True.
If you figured out that this car is almost on its last leg, it either needs major repair or replacement, and that makes you panic because you don't know how you would pull off a major repair or replace it. Then you know.
Okay.
If this is dying and you're thinking, you know what? Maybe I'll just get a new car.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Okay.
Right? You tend to know, or how much you have in the bank, how much you have on reserve, whether there's money coming in from multiple sources.
Yeah.
And not that we put our full stock in money and what we have.
True.
Let's be clear on that, right? Because the same way things can shift in one direction, it can shift in another.
This is true.
Right?
This is true.
But there is a comfort in knowing that you have a buffer. And I think most of us know when a crisis is looming, or you know when you're in a crisis.
True. True.
Right?
Do you think sometimes then that people could actually be in a financial crisis and don't know?
I don't think that's possible.
Okay.
I think, well, you may be in denial that you are on the verge of a crisis.
Okay.
Right? But if you are in a full-blown crisis, you know you're in a crisis because things aren't adding up.
True.
Right? Your house is on the chopping block. Be evicted because you can't pay the rent. Your power is disconnected because you haven't been able to pay the utility bill. And that's not for those people who just unorganized and just didn't pay the people. or withholding. Right? Or you struggle day to day to keep food on the table. You know,
there are indicators.
You don't miss that. You don't miss that.
Yeah.
Now there are some who are on their road to a crisis and may or may not be conscious of it, or
because some people might think it's ignoring it.
Ignoring it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know, when we talk about how much you earn versus how much you spend, you know, it is possible to be a multi-million-dollar earner and still mismanage.
Wow.
And you know how you do that? If you make $1 million, you spend $1.1 million.
This is true. This is true. This is true.
Then you are indebted. and a crisis is looming. And we see that with professional athletes, for example.
Musicians.
Very right. Very often you start with nothing and then you hit it big because you have this amazing talent, and you earn excessive amounts and you spend every penny or more than. And so the minute that flow stops, and if you're spending more than, the flow keep coming and you're in trouble already. But if you're spending every penny, the minute that flow is hindered by anything, an injury or a shift in consumer habits, so all of a sudden maybe you were the hot ticket item as a musician, and then people's preferences changed and there's a new musician on the stage that people are turning their attention to, and the flow stops, then you feel the crisis. But the reality is, if you were spending every penny, you were on your road. You were on the road to it.
Crisis. Especially if you weren't spending it in something that was making money.
Correct.
For sure.
Correct.
For sure.
And investing, I don't view that as the spending part, because what you're really doing is putting the money to work, and now you have multiple sources. So when your earning has stopped from, when I say earn, meaning where you physically get up and go and do something, then the passive income is coming in and you're okay.
Okay. Nice. This is good. I'm just, oh man, the things that people are going to learn in this book and how lives are going to change. I'm just excited. So very excited. But we're going to continue on. Going to continue on. And so I'm guessing, based on what you said, everyone probably and more than likely will probably experience some sort of financial crisis in their lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, all of us will experience a crisis.
Yeah.
Whether or not it produces a financial crisis, again,
it depends.
It depends, right?
It depends.
Because there are certain things, again, if you could predict it and prepare for it, it may not produce a financial crisis.
Yeah.
Right? It may have a financial component, but not necessarily a crisis. I've had to replace 4 tires at once and a battery.
Wow.
But it didn't create a financial crisis for me.
Yeah.
I had to replace my refrigerator, but it didn't create a crisis.
Yeah.
I had to take my kid to the emergency room. I've got 3 of them. We spend a lot of time at the emergency room, but it didn't create. I mean, that's a crisis. If somebody's ill, that's a crisis.
Yeah.
If you are prepared for it, we factor that in by purchasing insurance, for example, and then ensuring that our buffer is there to handle the copay.
Gotcha.
Right? So that crisis, a child falling down, needing stitches, that's a crisis. That's an emotional crisis. That's a physical crisis. Whether or not it's a financial crisis may or may not be controlled. Hurricane Doreen created a financial crisis for some.
Yeah.
You realize that there are some who earn money, and that COVID was a crisis. You realize that there are people who made more money during COVID.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. That's true. That's another factor.
So
it's essential stuff,
There were people who were overemployed.
Yeah.
And then there were people who were unemployed or underemployed.
Yeah.
There were people who discovered their gifts in the crisis.
This is true.
All of a sudden, everybody need a mask, and you have a sewing machine.
Exactly.
So you make masks.
Listen,
you're laid off, but you have a vehicle.
This is true.
People can't get around.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you start a delivery business.
Exactly.
Right?
This is true.
A crisis does not have to be a financial crisis. And I admit that there are some things in that you may not be able to control.
For sure.
Right?
And I think even in reading the book, you mentioned about how crisis can actually sometimes be good things. And you gave the story of your brother and your sister-in-law. And y'all gonna need to read the book to find out about it. But I thought it was amazing how they were able to pivot from Hurricane Dorian and their story. But they're gonna have to buy the book to get all of the details. But it's so true. Crisis doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
Yes. There's something I figured out on this journey, and it's something I tell my kids.
Yeah.
Nobody's handing out anything.
It's the truth.
If you want something, you have to go out and get it.
For sure.
Right? And maybe there are people handing things out. Here and there. And sometimes you have to be ready.
That part.
Right? Because there's opportunities that will come up. The scholarship opportunity came up.
Yeah.
I was ready.
Yeah.
Right? I was ready because I had already completed the associate's degree. I was in study mode, and I was looking to see how can I get through the bachelor's on a full-time basis as opposed to trying to do it part-time again. Opportunity came. Yes, that was a handout. I was ready. Right? So be mindful that everything's not being handed out. True. And even for the things that are, you have to
be ready for it.
You have to qualify to receive them.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. And so I know that you've coached many people who've gone through financial crisis, who've had dire financial circumstances. What are some of the things that you've identified that are some habits that we should kind of change, or some habits that you realize, okay, this needs to fix a little bit? And then are there ever times where it's so dire that it can't turn around based on what you've experienced?
I have yet to meet someone where I say it cannot be turned around.
And I guess, again, it's the mindset, the questions, all of that. Okay.
There are some that require much more work. And discipline and effort and creativity than the others.
Okay.
But I have yet to sit across someone and I go, wow, I cannot help you. Now, there are some people who come in with a defeatist mindset, and no matter what I tell them, they're going, no, you don't understand, you don't know. And despite what we can show, they still think and feel that way. That's a hard person to help. Yeah. Right? But a part of the question you asked was, what are some of the things I see that
some habits
that produces these challenges? Yeah. And I'll repeat one I said before. Spending more than you earn. Unnecessary debt. I say unnecessary because we can decide if we're going to take it on or not. True. How much we're going to take on. Failing to save, which those three things are part and parcel. I don't know if you realize that. Because if you're saving, you're not spending more than you're earning. True. And if you're saving, not spending more than you're earning, you're probably not straddled with debt. True. Because the truth is, I tell you, I am a person that used my credit cards a lot. Yeah. I use the possible. Don't shut me off by it. I credit card for me is a convenience. So I have to pay my property tax. I anticipated that when we built our house. Yeah. What the property tax would look like on average year to year. It is possible that the rate may go up and it's higher than you thought. But we anticipated that. And we're putting monies aside towards that. That's part of our financial plan. Preparing for it when it comes. Yeah. I swipe my credit card to pay it because it's convenient. I can do it online. But by the time the statement drops, I'm paying it off in full. Yeah. So it's not really, my credit card outstanding balance may be high, but I'm not in debt. Gotcha. Because I have assets, liquid assets, that exceeds that. Gotcha. So liquid assets minus how much I owe on the credit card, positive balance. Gotcha. Right? Yeah. And meanwhile, every time I do something like that, I'm getting points. True. Don't have a credit card unless it has a point system. Yeah. I'm using the points so that now I'm a family of 5. Yeah. When we're going on vacation, those points are being translated into either travel airplane miles, tickets or if we're going far journeys, I buy a regular ticket and I use the points to upgrade. True. There's nothing like taking a transatlantic flight in business class with the seats that go all the way back.
It's the truth.
And you're
There's
thinking,
a difference.
You're spending a lot of money. No,
might as well enjoy
using
it.
points.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you use them already. You've earned them.
Car rental or hotel, you know. So it is possible to use credit to your advantage. Yeah. Only do that if you are disciplined. Yeah. If you are not disciplined, don't touch it. Leave it alone. Yes. Know your weakness. Yeah, right?
This is true.
If you have trouble saving, automate the saving process. Right? Yeah. And we explore a lot of those.
That's in the book, for sure.
In the book, right? There are things you can do, but you have to be prepared to work. It's not going to fall in your lap. Yeah. You got to go and get it. You got to. For sure. I do this thing. Yeah. I'm a mother. You can tell, right? I will say, it's in the cupboard. They will open the cupboard door. I don't see it. And I say, It's in there, and it's not going to go, hey, see me here. You have to go in there and get it. You may have to move some things on the side. But if you open this cupboard with the mindset of, I don't see it, my kids say, nothing's lost unless mommy can't find it. If you open it with, I can't see it, you will not see it. It will be in your face, and you won't see it.
This is true.
If you opened that door with the, where is it? It's in here somewhere. Let me find it.
You'll find it.
You'll find it.
This is true. This is very true. And so I think it's also like what you mentioned in the book. It's not just about being in crisis, but being in crisis with a plan. Can you flesh that out a little bit for us?
You know, we talked about any number of examples of a crisis, a medical crisis, your car having an issue, things going wrong at your house, even a job layoff. The plan says, if I have a car, these are the types of things that I will need to consider. If I live in a body, if you live in a body, there are things that will probably happen to this body. If you own a home, there are things that you will need to do in the home.
For sure.
And the plan then is, okay, for the home, it's more than paying the mortgage. It's paying the mortgage. It's paying the insurance so that if there is a storm and there's damage, I can be reimbursed. There is potential plumbing and electrical problems and major replace, and in due course, maybe the roof needs to be redone. The plan then factors that stuff in so that you're not spending all. So we like to encourage, and this is a financial concept where they'll say, anticipate about 35% of your income to housing.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And that 35% should be just not the mortgage. So if you're earning $1,000, it's not just 35% of that $1,000 going totally to the mortgage, because there's more to running a home
than just paying the mortgage.
Yeah,
and I think you gave that example in the book too. I mean, there's Excel spreadsheets, there's downloads, just absolutely incredible.
Yes. So if 50% of your income is going to pay the mortgage, period, you're in a little bit of a challenge, and you're on your way to a crisis. You haven't planned for the crisis.
Gotcha.
Right? The crisis. I use that term loosely. But anticipate that these things are coming and factor it into your financial goal setting. How much you need to be holding, because saving is really your first line of defense. It's for those items that don't come up every day.
True.
Whether that's the annual premium on your insurance or anything else that you don't pay monthly. And it's also the things that can and will go wrong, things that need to be replaced. And then there's the investments, right? Holding a portion of it to plant to give you, let's use a corn for an example. If you're growing corn and you eat every ear of corn that your little farm produces for you, you have nothing for next year. You have nothing for the period when the corn is finished.
True.
Because we're talking about seasons. And you have nothing for next season. If you just withhold 1 or 2 ears. So that you dry a few of those greens to put back in the ground again. Then you've created this cycle. But if you consume it all,
then
there's no tomorrow for that. You have, right? So that's the concept of planning for the period. We know corn, you will not get corn out of the ground 12 months out of the year. Right? And sometimes that means you plant a patch of corn, you plant a patch of tomato, you plant a patch of this. So January.
You got something coming every month.
I don't know the seasons, but farmers, bear with me if I get it wrong. From January to March, we will eat corn. From April to June, it'll be tomatoes.
So you got something all year round.
And that's what planning says. Or you produce so much corn that you sell it and get cash. So you then turn that cash into food you buy for the rest of the year.
True.
That's the planning aspect. And
Okay.
it seems so simplistic when we talk about plans, but we sometimes do not recognize that the same is true for the monies we earn.
It's true.
Yeah, for our finances.
Yeah, looking at them as actual seeds as well.
Yes.
This is true.
Yes.
And you also mentioned this concept about financial change and financial transformation. And really initially I was like, oh, they're interchangeable. And you made it very clear they're actually not the same. So I don't know if you want to kind of flesh that out for those listening.
A change is doing something different, right? Doing the same thing, but doing it slightly different. A transformation is doing something new.
Wow. Okay.
Right? So if I could use, let's talk about the credit card.
Okay.
Right? A change is maybe making sure that what you use your credit card on or for, you have sufficient money to meet, if only the minimum payments, and always pay more than the minimum payments, right?
Okay.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah, a whole other story.
The change is from being in default and not being able to pay to changing it now that you've organized yourself where you can meet the payments on a regular basis.
Okay.
You've reorganized your finances. That's a change. A transformation, if we stay with the credit card, will be, I'm going to make this thing work for me. So I'm going to use it only when I have the full amount to pay it off. I buy groceries on credit card. Okay. I fill up my car at the petrol station with my credit card. Yeah. But I have the monies available. The only thing is I'm not walking with the cash.
Gotcha.
Right. So now I've gone from depending on this credit card, being in default. The change says I'm making sure it's operating regularly. I'm making the payments every month so that I can keep using it. The transformation says I'm going to shift what I do with it. I'm going to treat it as a convenience, but I'm not borrowing money from the bank. Can I tell you, if let's say your statement comes out January 1st, the payment is due January 28th. Whatever is the balance on January 1st, let's say it's $2,000. Or let's keep it simple. Let's say $500.
Okay.
If you pay $500 before the payment due date of January 21st, do you realize you pay absolutely no interest?
Okay.
No interest. That's why I say the card is a convenience for me. Now, to be clear, there are times when some things may happen. Yeah. And I have to swipe, and I didn't plan that, and I don't have the funds available, so I'm carrying that balance over.
The next one. Okay.
And so then I'm paying interest. But as a general rule, that's my focus. That's a change versus a transformation. I'm shifting what I do with this thing now, and it's now working for me. The bank works for me, and not me working for the bank.
Nice.
They make the annual payment off of me 9 times out of 10. And again, there are times when I have to carry a balance over for various reasons, but that's the exception, not the rule for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And so in chapter 6, how to manage crisis is chapter 6. You give several suggestions to assist us. You say defy fear, inventory your resources, seek solutions, get busy, but also give. But I'm in a financial crisis, Charlene. How can I give? How is this possible?
I think the same way positive thinking and seeking a solution opens the door. Giving is one of those things from my perspective. And realize that money isn't the only thing you can give.
That's true. That is true.
Giving is so much more than here's a dollar. Right?
Yeah.
It could be favor, it could be friendship, it could be patience and tolerance. And, I give a couple of examples around that in the book. But giving opens a flow. When giving stops, the flowing stops. Think of it as a stream, right? If you block that stream from moving past this point, the water becomes stagnant. There's something about letting that flow, because as things go out, it come in.
That's true. And you do give that example in the book. Clutch, You can't give or receive. And I was like, oh, this is so good.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't give or receive.
So if you take what you have and you do this, nothing's coming in or out. Nothing's going out for sure, but nothing's coming in either.
Wow.
Versus if you open up, then the flow. And it's just a principle that I've just proven over and over in my life. I mean, things that come to me and come through me, I find it keeps going. The minute you block that off, the flow stops. There's nothing worse than a stagnant stream.
Yeah.
It stinks.
It stinks. Exactly. It stinks. Exactly. As we, start to begin to round out our conversation and conclude, I thought it was interesting too. You talk about the fact that there should also be planning beyond the crisis. So the crisis, you've gotten through it, and there's some things you should do, some next steps. So for those, there might be people who are like, I'm actually good. Like I've not experienced anything. I've always had what I needed. There's never been a lack or anything like that. But how does planning beyond a crisis look?
If you're the person who has never had a crisis and you're happy where you are, I'm happy for you. I mean, congratulations, you've done well. And that does not happen by accident.
True.
The person who will tell me that, if we sit and have a conversation with them, they're implementing principles. I promise you that. This thing does not happen by accident, right? So the crisis, let's go back to my example about being fearful of the layoff. So the crisis was, what do I need to do to make sure that if I am laid off in future, I have a plan to fall back on? That was my main goal. So then that went beyond just, okay, now I have a degree. And it doesn't have to be that your planning means get a degree. This is just an example.
It's different for all of us.
But now I have a degree so that if I am laid off, I do have some options to find employment elsewhere and do other things.
This is true.
Beyond that, it was structuring my finances so that I have some savings so that if I am laid off, I could weather the storm when the money is not coming in. Having produced these opportunities where you can earn outside of your earning hours and power and potential that you have to get up and go to be able to garner those wages, to income coming in beyond that. If you are at the point where, let's say, I see a lot of cases where the mortgage is in default and we're in trouble of losing the home. One of the options may be give up the home, right? And in particular, if it's draining your resources, it could be that it's too much for what you're earning as either as an individual or as a family. So worst case scenario, maybe we have to get rid of the home. And in the book, we explore that and we use the example. Let's say the value on the home is $300,000 and you owe the bank $100,000. Do you realize that if you sell it and you pay off the loan, you have $200,000? Okay, so by the time we take out all the fees, etc., okay, maybe it's $175,000. But that's a beautiful start over amount.
For sure.
And maybe you come back with something smaller,
more
that
manageable.
costs you less. Or you may decide, I'm done with that home ownership thing, and let someone else worry about that. It may mean that. But now, planning beyond the crisis looks like this. Okay, before 50% of my income was going just to the mortgage payment. That was in the insurance, that was in grocery, that was in... Planning beyond the crisis says, okay, I'm starting over. So now, let me see how much I want to spend on them, how much is comfortable for me to put into a mortgage, right? And then planning that out so that you have enough in your 35%. If we say 35% is the amount you allocate, that includes the actual mortgage payment. That includes putting money aside so that I'm ready when the annual insurance premium comes up. That means parking some funds for when,
Yeah.
not if, when I need to call in the plumber or the electrician, and for when I need to replace the refrigerator. And that's what planning ahead looks like. So now I'm comfortably in that, and I'm creating the buffer through my savings. Some of that savings is going towards investment. So I now have some additional funds coming in. And maybe in due course, maybe I can't afford that house that I just had to give up, right? But planning beyond says considering all of these things and being ready for it, organizing your finances in such a way that the next crisis that comes is not really a crisis. It's an inconvenience.
Exactly. So Charlene, as we close out, I love that you mentioned those percentages just now, because even in the book, you kind of give us a breakdown of what, housing should be, The fact that we even get to do electronic downloads, I absolutely love that. And you've talked about a lot of the theory about changing our mindset, but practically you've also included in the book about bank accounts, about credit cards, investing, stocks and bonds, retirement accounts, real estate, mutual funds, and so much more. Like, people get the book, there's so much, because even locally here in the Bahamas, a lot of the information that we may see on social media, the things that come to our attention, concerns the US or other countries, so it's not as relatable. But I love the fact that the book, it's literally for everyone. And was it intentional in that way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Certainly, we live in the Bahamas, and while I would love to serve a global market, I carry a burden for the people that are in my vicinity. I think there are things we can be doing differently.
For sure.
We can be more effective. And there are options there, maybe not as widely known to some.
That part too,
But yes, very, very intentional. I want to start at home. Even before I went abroad. And the principles can be used anywhere. That's for sure. Right? But certainly my heart's desire is to get people in my environment, including my spiritual family. Appreciating that this is okay. It's even encouraged. Endorsed by our maker.
Exactly.
Right? And so
stewardship includes your finances.
So if I can get one person to buy into that, my work would have been successful.
Well, it's been successful. I've definitely bought it. Definitely bought in. Charlene, this conversation has been, and again, I can't say how much this is such a full circle moment for me, because it went from, okay, there may be a book. The book is here, like, it's out, it's done, you've done it. And so where will it be available? Where can people now purchase the book?
On Amazon.
Okay.
Available in hard copy, Kindle, Audible.
Wow.
In local bookstores.
Okay. So it's for everyone. Everyone can get their hands on this book. There's no limitations.
And it's everywhere where books are sold.
You love to hear it. So as we close out, are there any parting words that you want to leave with persons who, wants to watch this, are thinking about getting the book? Are there any parting words?
Know your numbers and be ready to not just survive financially, but thrive.
That's it. That I can't say anymore. Mic drop, we're done. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Charlene, thank you so much for your yes.
Thank you.
This is a book that future generations, even after you're gone, will be able to hold and be guided by. And so I'm just so happy and grateful to be here, from the stage to now sitting here in the seats. And very soon we'll have a physical copy in my own hand, signed by the author. So again, I say thank you.
Thank you too.